He gave everything he had, and in the end, he was left to die alone. Few things hurt more than ingratitude. It's like a silent knife that pierces without warning, especially when it comes from those we trust most. This is a real, raw, pain-filled story that deeply reflects on the value of sacrifice and the ease with which some turn away after receiving everything they could. The main character in this story is not a man, it's an ox. Yes, an animal, but not just any animal. He was a silent companion, a tireless servant, a living symbol of loyalty. An ox that carried heavy burdens, endured the heat of the scorching sun, walked kilometers every day, always obedient, always present. For years, he helped support an entire farm. He fed families. It was part of the routine. It became more than useful. It became necessary. And most impressively, he never complained, never ran away, never fought back. He was always there, waiting for the next command, ready to serve. The days turned into months, the months turned into years, and the ox remained firm. Over time, his paws became slower, the eyes more tired. But still, he continued, because that's what he knew how to do, serve. He didn't ask for anything in return. He just wanted to do right. It wasn't just a pack animal. He was a symbol, a silent soul who taught every day about patience, resistance, and loyalty. How many times has he laid down on the hard floor after an exhausting day without even receiving a look of gratitude? How many times did you work when you were hungry, thirsty, in pain, and still didn't stop? But time takes its toll. And as with everything that was once useful, the moment came when he no longer had the same strength. The paws trembled, the breath failed, and the eyes that once sparkled now only asked for rest. It was at that moment that the boss's true face appeared. Instead of gratitude came contempt. Instead of care, abandonment. He did not receive a pension. He didn't get a decent rest. He didn't even have a last look of affection. It was simply discarded, as if it had never been worth anything. Left in the corner of a dry pasture, without food, without water, forgotten like an old object, like a burden. How often does this happen to people around us? How many fathers, mothers, workers, friends who dedicate their entire lives and in the end only receive silence in return? This story goes beyond an ox. She touches on something that many feel, but few have the courage to talk about: the fear of being forgotten after giving everything. And the cruelest thing is that ingratitude doesn't scream. She just walks away. She pretends she doesn't remember. She looks away as you sink. And that's exactly what happened to him. He was the first to arrive and the last to leave. Can you imagine a being so dedicated that every sunrise was a reason for work and every sunset meant another mission accomplished? This ox, our silent character, lived for many years with a single motivation: to serve, not by obligation, but by nature. Every step taken in the pasture, every load he helped to push, every work in the fields he carried out with a type of fidelity that often surpasses the loyalty of many human beings. In the early years, his strength was almost limitless. When dawn came, he got up before the other animals realized that the sun would appear, ready to carry firewood, carry sacks, pull carts, plow land. He only breathed to work, and he worked with a silent, almost invisible regularity. When the boss woke up and saw that animal already standing, ready to serve, he felt safe. There he is again, he thought, with a silent certainty that he could count on for everything. And it was no exaggeration to say that on many journeys, the ox did more than its duty. It went beyond. After everyone had rested, he still sniffed the right path, looked for food, waited for the moment for one last push. It was as if he knew, deep down, that his loyalty guaranteed stability to the farm. Over the years, working hours have not reduced. On the contrary, sometimes there were extra harvests, urgent demands, days of relentless sun. The ox didn't ask for a day off. He didn't complain about calluses, pain, or fatigue. Even when the sun punished the burning leather and the heat melted body and will, he continued. Because you were taught it, or because you were born to do it? Hard to say, but that's it. It would work. He was the first to arrive at heavy tasks and the last to leave when the sun sank below the horizon. He worked overtime in the silence of the pasture, eating what was left, drinking the dirtiest water, sleeping little. His eyes showed fight scenes. I imagine the deep look on the boss's face, seeing the heavy breathing, the increasingly tense muscles, the trembling paws. It wasn't just an ox. It was a presence that said, "I'm here for something bigger." Q. When someone arrived at the farm sick, he was called to bring medicine. When there was a flood, he helped save bags and protect fences. It was trustworthy, and this trust built, grew, and grew. The boss delegated tasks, assigned challenges to the ox's back that no other animal faced. And he accepted, because he always accepted, because perhaps he believed that serving without complaining would bring recognition. Perhaps he believed that his dedication would one day be seen, valued, and rewarded. And how many times during the morning, under the light coolness of the moonlight, did the ox still rummage around in the pen? He looked for food, looked for green pasture to eat the next day, cleaned his space to be ready. He didn't rest in a hurry, he rested with purpose because he knew the day would start early. He was diligent even in silence. The paws were hardening, the skin was adapting to the scorching sun, but the heart, although not human, seemed to beat with an expectation of being recognized. And he was right to wait so long, because all the sacrifice he had made was visible, even though many pretended not to see it. The routine insisted on repeating itself. Sunrise, work after work, sweat after sweat, and the silent certainty that tomorrow everything would start again. Even when the cow got sick, he helped around the corral, pushed fences, took care of the seeds carried by the wind. The boss often said, "You are tireless." But words, my friend, do not feed. Words don't heal wounds. Words do not replace affection, shelter, or attention. Even so, the ox remained firm. It was as if his life were a ritual of continuous surrender, a living story of sacrifice, of resignation, of service with no apparent return. It was at this time that small gestures of recognition began to appear, almost like crumbs, a little mineral salt, better shade, a dose of extra food in lean years. Modest things, but for someone who dedicated everything, they seemed like grand gestures. But gestures never make up for what happens with the heart. The soul, thirsty for a genuine look, remained thirsty. On days of intense rain, the ox faced mud, treacherous puddles and slippery ground. Even so, he moved cautiously, calculating each step so as not to slip too much, because he knew that if he fell, he wouldn't be able to get up quickly like before. Sometimes his paws would slip and he would stop, panting, but he would come back, steady. He always came back, and by that time many other animals would be exhausted, but he could handle it. It was as if there was in its essence a matter built to serve until the end. And the boss saw all of this. And he saw what he didn't see, that ox was a symbol. A silent reminder that there are beings who deliver without asking, who carry without complaining, who fight even when injured. And there was a mix of pride and exploration in it all. Because the boss took advantage of loyalty. Not only did he take advantage of it, he rested on top of it. The seasons changed. They arrived dry with thin pasture. They were filled with demanding crops. The ox adapted. Each season required effort, and he gave it. Each challenge asked for more work, and he responded with more sweat. The body marked the urgency of time. Joint pains, back stiffness, increasingly slow steps. But the mind, if we can put it like that, continued with the same impetus to serve. For years, no one witnessed the weight of vanity or human recognition. No one asked, "Can you handle it?" No one offered extra shade or a paw by his side. He went alone. But still, he continued. And that's where the contrast begins to form. When delivery is so high, expectations rise, even if silently. When sacrifice is daily, recognition becomes almost a vital necessity. And this silent ox deserved it. He deserved a caress, clean water, decent food, legitimate rest. He wasn't just a used animal. He was part of that farm, part of that history, part of the lives of those who lived there. Many benefited. Many laughed alongside the crops he had helped sustain. Many had food, comfort, profit. He never asked who was left behind. He just did it. There came a day when he realized that something was changing. The tasks began to decrease, not out of mercy, but out of neglect. The boss delegated less to him, talked more with machines, bought tractors. The ox was still requested when the machine broke down, when there was urgency, but not like before. He was no longer the first to be called with enthusiasm. It was called as a last option. Pauses began to appear between obligations. He hoped this was rest, concession, but it was indifference. The crumbs of attention became non-existent. Mineral salt is no longer administered. The surplus food which was previously given began to be redirected to other younger animals. He stayed on the sidelines looking for scraps. The other animals, they lay in the green pasture. He made do with what was left in the remains. The boss still said, "You did a lot for me," but he no longer looked him in the eye. The tone of the voice was mechanical, almost empty, like someone saying something out of obligation. The ox no longer felt the vibration of gratitude. He only felt the weight of abandonment coming, drop by drop. And then, in the silence of the pasture, when the sun shines brightest and the heat weighs heavy in the air, he lay down on the hard ground. Not because of voluntary rest, but because of inevitable tiredness. The paws no longer supported him. The body trembled. He waited. He waited for someone to see, that someone would remember, that someone said, "Come with me," but no one. Just wind, dry land, blind eyes. He even looked up at the big house, at the shed where the boss made plans and managed profits, and he wanted to walk there, but the forces did not allow it. Then he stood there, motionless, almost invisible, a reverse symbol of surrender, of abandonment. Now you who are watching this video, imagine how many oxen, how many people live exactly this situation. They are loyal to the limit. They give their lives. They sacrifice themselves day after day. And in the end, they are forgotten, vilified by the ingratitude that corrodes the human heart. If this story moves you, leave the word betrayed or ungrateful here in the comment. I want to see how many will identify. Even after everything, they started to forget him. In the heavy air of the farm, something began to change, subtly, almost imperceptibly, but lethal. At first, they were small, almost symbolic attitudes. The promise of fresh water at dusk was no longer fulfilled. The shade that was once provided for him to rest was slowly abandoned until he was exposed to the burning sun, suffering without protection. Anyone who has experienced this knows. It is in the simplest gestures that betrayal infiltrates. The boss, who had praised his tireless loyalty for so many seasons, began to no longer visit him. I didn't get to the pasture to check on him. I didn't ask if it could support the previous day's load. I only observed from a distance when I needed results. Interactions turned into cold, brief orders, devoid of empathy. He, the faithful ox, was reduced to a disposable instrument. Broken promises became frequent. There was a promise to shed less load on hotter days. That promise was forgotten in the first heat wave. There was a promise to reserve a greener pasture for him in times of drought. That promise evaporated as soon as crops required more effort. The words spoken to the wind lost weight, became noise, and the ox, which believed so much in that human loyalty, continued to believe in silence. The emotional decline began from the inside out. The once firm gaze became dull. The once vigorous paws trembled. The body reacted with fatigue. He felt the cold of indifference in each dawn that arrived without care, in each evening that died without a single touch of recognition. Something inside him, a spark of expectation, still resisted the pain of imminent betrayal. One day, early in the morning, he waited for the boss to arrive to order his daily task. But the boss didn't show up. It didn't even go near the corral. He didn't even spare a glance. The farm's coffers operated normally, but he was being forgotten. The orders came from far away, through third parties by a hurried foreman. He was no longer seen. It was just one more piece in increasingly automated agricultural machinery. The other creatures on the farm, horses, cows, birds, began to notice a difference in attention. They received gentle care, reinforced food, and exchanged glances with humans who passed by. He, the ox that was once central, saw his place narrowing. He remained on the margins, a figure who had already belonged to the middle of history and was now relegated to the background. When a problem arose, a machine stuck, a cart driver on the way. He was summoned. It was called urgently, used as before, but without words of thanks, without gestures of kindness. It was activated as a last-minute resource, a reserve when you run out. This corrodes something deep, the dignity of those who have always been available. The flame of hope, which still flickered inside, felt torn apart. Walks to the countryside began to be less respected. He carried heavier bags than his strength allowed, because mistakes were made in the calculations, and he was not heard. The sunscreen was removed, citing savings. Resting shade was offered to younger animals under the pretext of rejuvenation. He became more exposed, more fragile, more vulnerable. It was an ox unaccompanied by any human consideration. Even after everything, they started to forget him. The phrase echoes like a lament, because it is precisely in silent ingratitude that the greatest torment lies, being useful for generations and being erased into oblivion. He heard voices that once spoke tenderly, now distant, impersonal. The sounds of the farm echoed meaninglessly without connection. The wind blew through the dry trees like a necrotizing song. He hoped someone would notice his wear and tear. I expected some kind of repair to be done, for the boss to send a new drinking fountain, for the fence to be repaired, for someone to say, "You've become old, but you're still valuable." But silence prevailed. The abandonment was visible. He was reduced to a specter of a superior past when he was called with enthusiasm and responded with vigor. The pain of betrayal is poisonous because it is slow. It arrives drop by drop, infiltrating the heart. He felt every drop, the morning that passed without clean water, the evening that came without beauty, the foreman who passed by without looking, the machine that replaced the load he once pulled with pride. Every gesture of indifference was a stab with no apparent blade, invisible but deep wounds. On rainy days, when the ground was muddy, he resisted. Even with heavy bones, he stood up. Even with his paws shaking, he advanced. But no one recognized that current bravery. He was no longer called upon for special tasks. Their loads were distributed. He took what was left, as if value was measured by immediate utility, and, already old, it seemed expendable. Mental analysis. He thought if he could think like a human, he shouldn't have served too much, that he should have measured his loyalty, that should have demanded recognition. But it was too late. Because his nature was to serve, and now he was hurt by nature itself. Many did not even notice the decline, because they looked at the end results, at the harvest, at the profits, and not at the being that sustained it all. The ox, wide open in wear and tear, was silenced in praise. It, which for decades was a vital part of the gear, had its spaces reduced. It had corroded invisible fortresses. The enclosure that was once clean was now full of thorns and stones. The straw that covered the floor gave way to dirty rags. The water, which was once clear, became cloudy. He drank what was left, contemplated what they gave him, and what others rejected, he accepted, because he always accepted. But now he has also accepted abandonment. His quieter croaks seemed to plead, "Remember me, see me, show that I still exist." But they were not attended to. Darkness thickened inside him. The human presence became a mere distant shadow. Existence became agony. He expected a word, a gesture, a breath of compassion, but no one came. One moonlit night he lay on the ground, looking up at the stars that once seemed witnesses to his delivery. He tried to get up. He didn't make it. He tried to let out a moo, as if searching for a human echo. Nothing responded. The loneliness was total. The emptiness entered to the bones. The abandonment was latent, painful, open. He lay there, motionless, injured, but not broken, because his silent soul still wanted justice. Now I ask you a question. How many human souls have felt this upheaval? How many people who gave everything found themselves forgotten when their strength weakened? If this story has already touched you, leave forgotten or hurt in the comments. Tell me if you've ever felt betrayed after serving too much. Stay with me, because the next chapter will show the exact moment of betrayal, when abandonment becomes action, and you will understand how pain can transform grateful beings into wounded souls. He listened in silence and left without looking back. It was a gray day, one of those days when the wind enters the dry branches and seems to whisper secrets of abandonment. The farm was done, the work was completed, the machines were resting. But something heavy hung in the air, a silence that announced nothing but revealed everything. He woke up early as usual, with heavy paws and a scarred body, but still with a faint hope of recognition. He arrived at the barn, waited for the call, only heard a cold order from a distant foreman saying that he didn't need it today. It was the beginning of the betrayal. No voice called him by name anymore. No tone of affection descended upon him. Until that moment when the boss ordered the keys to be collected, the gates closed, and to act as if the ox didn't exist. He felt it, his stomach, his chest, his spirit. When the gates closed and he was left in the most remote corner of the pasture, out of sight, something inside him understood. He was no longer needed. The betrayal had ended in official abandonment. Harvest orders were now handed over to tractors and new men. The ox, which had sustained production for so many years, was relegated to the sidelines as if it were just forgotten trash. He tried to get closer, trotting with effort, searching for a look, a gesture, a word. But no one moved. No one came out of the door to see him. The sounds that once announced compassion now sounded mechanically muted. He heard voices passing far away, decisions being made, veiled promises about the new and the efficient. He was silenced. And then came the exact moment. A tractor passed by his side, crushing grass and raising dust, followed by men who walked along the trail that he himself had paved for years. They did not swerve out of caution. It was as if he didn't exist. The sound of the exhaust, the creaking of the wheels, the trampling of boots, everything screamed exclusion. He, the ox that served for decades, has become part of the landscape that is ignored. The exclusion became visible. He stretched, tried to lift his torso. The trembling paws protested. The body hurt. The gaze searched between the gates of the big house, searched the porch for a human face that remembered the sacrifices, mentally asked, "Remember me." But nothing, just emptiness, just heavy indifference, just the distant sound of voices and machines. One of the foremen stopped and looked at where he lay, but he looked away quickly, perhaps with guilt, perhaps in a hurry. He saw that look, that brief acknowledgement that didn't find permission to turn into a hug. He felt a shiver run down his spine, a twinge of pain that shattered something in his chest. He stood there, motionless, awaiting a decision, and the decision came, to continue without him. Paths were drawn outside your route, doors closed. He stayed behind. He heard the creaking of the chains of a fence being closed. He saw logs being piled in front of the pasture that held his exhausted body. Exclusion became a physical barrier. The match became concrete. He knew that this was the end point of trust. There, he was left behind. He heard everything in silence, the closing of gates, the murmur of voices that disappeared, the sound that receded like a train leaving. He heard the footsteps retreating, and he left too. Although he couldn't actually move, he left inwardly. His spirit slowly broke away. He stopped waiting. He stopped believing in applause. He stopped seeking attention. He saw betrayal consummate in every gesture, in every man who turned his back, every machine that replaced his sweat, every decision made without his presence. He understood that he was no longer part of the plan. It was an expendable element. The final bang came when a cart passed by the fence, and someone said, without looking at it, "That one is no longer useful." The phrase struck his being with ferocity. It wasn't a scream, it was a whisper that passed through the body. He heard clearly, and that moment entered his interior forever. He listened in silence and left without looking back. The tears that perhaps a human would have flowed, for him, they were invisible drops contained in the body. He couldn't cry like a human, but he felt the struggle, the tension, the sense of rupture. Betrayal is guided by the most cutting disappointment when the love was unilateral, the sacrifice constant. He was always waiting for a gesture of recognition and, at the most necessary moment, he received exclusion. The sound of the doors closing echoed like a sentence. The departure of sound, the tearing of silence, the disappearance of friendly voices. Everything was witness to his internal departure. He still tried to stretch his neck, perhaps to see the big house, perhaps to look for one last sign of faith. But everything was lost in the dust, in the moral distance between those who gave everything and those who turned their backs. And now he stood there, motionless in body, but free within himself. He who always served, and with dignity, was betrayed at the height of his dedication. Abandonment, ingratitude, exclusion, elements that transformed the most loyal servant into a wounded being. The open wound cannot be seen on the skin, but it can be felt in the silence, in the echo of the departure. If you are here and your heart has already hurt with this part of the story, leave betrayal or injustice in the comments. Tell me, have you ever lived through a moment when you gave everything and were left aside? Wait. In the next section, we will delve into the deep pain, the emptiness that remains, and how this moment of betrayal shapes scars that no one sees. When I think about everything this ox experienced, the unquestionable dedication, the silent sacrifices, the devastating abandonment, I see a consequence that goes far beyond the story of an animal betrayed. This narrative is a symbol, mirror, and warning for all the souls who give themselves without demanding a return, who serve with loyalty and end up being forgotten. His life teaches us that true loyalty is not an emotional contract with guarantees, but an act of surrender, and that ingratitude often arises when we trust most. Often those who support the foundation of a relationship, a home, a company, or a dream are the first to become invisible when the gears require renewal. And there, in the silence of abandonment, something cruel is revealed. That human or symbolic value depends on the usefulness recognized by others. If this ox could express what he felt in the last moments of the betrayal, he would say with pain, "I was seen only when useful, forgotten when too old to serve." This is the silent betrayal that many of us have seen happen at work, in friendship, marriage, family. People who gave everything but were relegated to oblivion when they no longer produced as before. Don't make the mistake of thinking that stories like this are exclusive to an ox. They are repeated in homes where old parents are ignored, in companies where loyal employees are replaced without a shadow of gratitude, in friendships that fall apart the moment we no longer like them. Human morality reveals its most bitter face when ingratitude imposes itself, and those who love too much often end up being hurt. And that's exactly why we need to reflect together. How many like him are being forgotten today? How many silent people who gave up their strength are experiencing disguised abandonment? Have you ever felt like him, invisible after serving? Look around you. Who gave loyalty? Who brought sacrifice? Who never asked for recognition? Are they valued or are they erased? The answer is not simple, but this story cries out for moral justice within the viewer. And I want you to think, if you could rescue one betrayed soul, who would it be? If you could say thank you to those who donated, to those who still donate, who would you hug? If this story touched your heart, try using the words value, loyalty, or invisible in the comments. I want to see how many can relate and how many have already felt this pain of being erased after everything they did for someone. And don't leave, because we're not done yet. The next part will delve into the echo of this betrayal, in the emptiness that remains, in the scars that no one sees, in the way in which a being who was once so useful deals with the pain of being forgotten. Hang in there, because this will still hurt your faith, but it might also awaken something deep within you.